Thank you for stopping by at the Movie Marquee. Our podcast reviews well-known movies and contains spoilers. The podcast may contain mature subject matter and mature language. Listener discretion is advised. Enjoy the show.
Quiet on set. Places, everybody. And action.
Welcome, everybody, to the Movie Marquee. I'm your host, Eric, and today's episode we are going to be reviewing the 1982 release by Sydney Pollack, Tootsie. And with me are my co-hosts, as always, Ken.
You should have seen the look on her face when she thought I was a lesbian.
And Ted.
I don't believe in hell. I believe in unemployment, but not hell.
That's right. And I'll tell you, folks, that is one nutty hospital. And you'll get all these lines that we're talking about as you listen to this podcast. Here we are. We're talking about the third installment of Sydney Pollack, my director, Tootsie, a 1982 comedy release. One of my favorites, of course, and one of your favorites. Maybe, maybe not. Ted, tell us a little bit about this movie, some of the particulars.
Tootsie was released in 1982. It has a running time of 1 hour and 56 minutes. It was directed by Sydney Pollack and written primarily by Don McGuire and a host of others. It stars Dustin Hoffman as Michael Dorsey, Jessica Lange as Julie, Terry Garr as Sandy, Dabney Coleman as Ron, Charles Durning as Les, and uncredited at the beginning of the movie, Bill Murray as Jeff, Sydney Pollack as George Fields, and George Gaines as John Van Horn. Tootsie had a budget of $21 million, and it grossed at the box office $177.2 million. Tootsie is certified fresh by Rotten Tomatoes at 90%. It has an audience score of 81%.
Not bad.
Not bad at all. The critics' consensus was that Tootsie doesn't squander its high-concept comedy premise with fine dialogue and sympathetic treatment of the characters. Roger Ebert gave the movie 4 stars, and there's a couple of passages from his review that I found were really good. Roger Ebert said, "It also works as a lot of other things. Tootsie is the kind of movie with a capital M that they used to make in the 1940s when they weren't afraid to mix up absurdity with seriousness, social comment with farce, and a little heartfelt tenderness right there with the laughs. The movie gets you coming and going." Tootsie might have been content to limit itself to the complications of New York life and drag. It could have been Victor Victoria visits Elaine's, but the movie's a little more ambitious than that. Michael Dorsey finds to his interest and amusement that Dorothy begins to take on a life of her own. She's a liberated eccentric, a woman who seems sort of odd and funny at first, but grows on you and wins your admiration by standing up for what's right. And then Tootsie has a lot of fun with its plot complications. We get almost every possible variation on the theme of mistaken sexual identity. The movie also manages to make some lighthearted but well-aimed observations about sexism. It also pokes satirical fun at soap operas, New York show business agents, and the Manhattan social pecking order. And it turns out to be a touching love story. After all, so touching that you may be surprised how moved you are at the conclusion of the comedy. Vincent Canby of the New York Times gave 4 out of 5 stars. His summation was, "Tootsie restores the original meaning of the term situation comedy, free of the pejorative associations that have occurred over the years because of the glut of awful ones on television." Robert Hatch of The Nation said, "Shadowboxing his way downtown, Dorsey suddenly yells, 'I'm a great character actor and I can play anybody.' In Tootsie, Hoffman proves that he just about can." Richard Scheichel of Time said, "It's not just the best comedy of the year, it is popular art on the way to becoming cultural artifact." And William Gallagher of the BBC gave it 4 out of 5 stars. "It's jaunty, witty, and somehow satisfying, despite being simple." In doing the research of all of the critical reviews, I did watch a clip of At the Movies with Siskel and Ebert, and this was Gene Siskel's favorite movie of 1982.
No kidding. Wow.
Yep. There's a lot here, a lot of meat on the bone that we're going to be discussing here.
So Siskel and Ebert, you said Ebert gave it 4 stars. It was Siskel's favorite movie of 1982. That's pretty big reviews there.
Yeah, rave reviews for everybody from Sydney Pollack, the director, to Sydney Pollack, the actor, to really the entire cast, especially to Dustin Hoffman.
Well, Jessica Lange won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, and ironically enough, Terry Garr was also nominated for Best Supporting Actress. Same movie, same role. How about that?
And Jessica Lange was also nominated for another Academy Award from another movie, too.
Yeah, crazy. And then
all in that
also
same
in
year.
that year, you had Victor Victoria, which is also kind of a cross-dressing kind of movie.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. 82 is a banner year for this format, I guess. Ken, tell us a little bit about the plot of Tootsie.
Tootsie, RuPaul, the early years. Just kidding. Tootsie. Michael Dorsey is a respected actor, but nobody in New York City wants to hire him because he is a perfectionist and difficult to work with. He makes ends meet by working as a server in a restaurant and teaching acting classes. After many months without an acting job, Michael hears of an opening on a popular daytime soap opera, Southwest General, from a friend and acting student, Sandy Lester, who tries out for the role of hospital administrator Emily Kimberly, but doesn't get it. In desperation, he personates a woman auditioning as Dorothy Michaels and gets the part. Michael takes the job as a way to raise $8,000 to produce a play by his roommate, Jeff Slater, which will star himself and Sandy. Michael plays Emily, a feisty feminist who surprises the other actors and the crew, who expect her to be, as written, another swooning female. His character quickly becomes a national sensation. When Sandy catches Michael in her bedroom, half undressed because he wants to try on her clothes for ideas for Dorothy's wardrobe, he covers up by claiming he wants to have sex with her. Making matters worse, he's attracted to one of his co-stars, Julie Nichols, a single mother in an unhealthy relationship with the show's amoral, sexist director, Ron Carlyle. At a party where Michael approaches Julie with a pickup line to which she had previously told Dorothy she would be receptive to, she throws a drink in his face. Later, Michael, as Dorothy, makes tentative advances on Julie after she had just ended her relationship with Ron per Dorothy's advice. Makes it well known that she is not a lesbian. Meanwhile, Dorothy on her own admirers to contend with, older cast members John Van Horn and Julie's widowed father, Les. Les proposes marriage, insisting that Dorothy think about it before answering. When Michael returns home, he finds John, who almost forces himself on Dorothy until Jeff walks in on them. A few minutes later, Sandy arrives, asking why he hasn't answered her calls. Michael admits he's in love with another woman, and Sandy screams and breaks up with him. The tipping point comes when, due to Dorothy's popularity, the show producers want to extend her contract for another year. Michael extricates himself when a technical problem forces the cast to perform live by improvising a revelation about Emily, that she is actually Edward, Emily's twin brother, who took her place to avenge her. This allows everybody a way out, but Julie is so outraged at Michael's deception that she punches him in the groin once the cameras have stopped rolling and storms off. Some weeks later, Michael is moving forward with producing Jeff's play. He returns Les's engagement ring, and Les says, "The only reason you're still living is because I never kissed you." Despite his anger, Lee admits that Michael was good company as Dorothy. Michael later waits for Julie outside the studio. She is reluctant to talk to him, but he tells her that he and her father played pool and had a good time. She finally admits she misses Dorothy. Michael tells her, "I was a better man with you as a woman than I ever was with a woman as a man." Julie forgives him, and they walk down the street together, engaged in conversation. The end.
Very well put.
Thank you, Wikipedia.
Thank you, Wikipedia. Let's just get right into this movie. Why don't we? I'm sure we've all seen it, probably on video would be my guess. It came out in 82, so we're probably all 10 years old or under. So clearly we didn't see it in the theater.
Yeah, no, I would have been 3 years old when the movie was released in the theaters, but it was probably either on TV or video.
Yeah.
Paid cable for me. It was on all the time in the mid-'80s, constantly playing every single moment.
For me, it was probably cable television as well, too, but I obviously own a copy of it and love it. But Ken, I think we were talking about this. You said this is one of those movies that you don't see on cable anymore.
Yeah. You don't see it anywhere.
And it's funny, when you brought that up to me, I don't have cable per se, but you don't see it on cable. You're absolutely right. I wonder if it's the subject matter. Is it not considered a quote unquote classic? You don't see it on like your TBS, your TNT, your AMC, Bravo, any of the real channels, which is kind of a shame.
I'm really surprised not on Bravo, because that would seem to be a movie that would...
Bravo's too consumed with the Real Housewives garbage. But my thing with that is first of all, it is a classic. It was number 69 on the AFI's greatest movies.
Not greatest comedies, greatest movies.
Greatest movies, yeah.
Of all time, yes.
The big list.
Big list.
The big list. And I disagree with that, Ken. I think you're being a little bit harsh. You can't deny the movie. The movie is classic. The reason I think that you don't see it, especially like on TNT, a lot of their formats have changed. The only TV station now that really hasn't changed its format is Turner Classic Movies. TNT now is more obsessed with providing hour-long dramedies or dramas, and of course NBA basketball.
Of course.
But AMC now is a powerhouse for the hour-long drama. They've kind of become singularly focused on The Walking Dead. But as far as it being a classic, I don't see it come up on Turner Classic Movies very often. And I'm not exactly sure why. I mean, because if they're going to do a Dustin Hoffman, I guess what they would do, like sometimes they do weeks or days or people.
Probably going to do like Midnight Cowboy. You're going to do All the President's Men.
Oh,
yeah.
I think with Turner Classic Movies, I think there's something about the 80s where they're not sure if they're going to classify it as classic movies yet.
Sometimes. Depends on the movie.
Right, but as you get like later on in our lives, the number of classics start to get more and more, and it's probably more difficult for Turner Classic Movies to have all these classics in rotation. But you don't see it on paid cable channels like Showtime, HBO.
They recycle newer
movies, yeah.
Newer movies, and HBO and Showtime, let's be perfectly honest, they're now powerhouses in the drama genre now as well, the hour-long.
Their own independent stuff that they produce.
Right. They're more into that as well. The only thing about the content of this movie that was problematic for me was where
Charles Durning proposing to a woman he's never kissed?
No, it's the lead doctor. I mean, he's basically forcing himself on Dustin Hoffman's character.
The George Gaines character.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where he's forcing himself when they're in his apartment. Michael actually sums that whole scene up perfectly to Bill Murray when he says, I was going to be in the New York Post tomorrow morning.
Right. Oh, clearly.
You don't know it, but the movie, it rebounds quickly, but it has a dark element to that particular sequence. That's the only problematic part with the movie. I mean, you really can't say what's going to trigger people nowadays anyway.
Well, I mean, honestly, let's be honest. It was a scene where it was kind of like, okay, he was forcing himself on her, quote unquote, but honestly, 5 minutes into that, he would have realized that it's a man and probably just flipped out.
Right.
Most definitely. So that it wouldn't really have gone that.
You ever notice that George Gaines is always playing like the bumbling idiot role, like in Police Academy? And, even in this one, he's kind of a little bit of a bumbling idiot.
Yeah.
But he is a fun bumbling idiot.
He's very funny. No, he's very funny. I love it.
Oh, he is. Yeah.
When he comes out, does Jeff know?
Yeah. His reaction when Dustin Hoffman takes off the wig and everything, that's pretty priceless.
I like it when he first meets Dorothy and he's like, oh, we got a scene together. And he uses the breath freshener. Call him the tongue.
Yeah, that's so creepy.
But that is so of the era too.
Oh, it is. I mean, if anybody wants to know what the Hollywood Me Too movement was, all you have to do is show them Tootsie, if we're going to be perfectly honest.
And how about Dabney Coleman, man? I mean, he's playing that role just like he's doing it in 9 to 5. It's perfect.
That's what I was just going to say. What did Dabney Coleman do to anybody to get typecast as this complete misogynistic, just complete asshole?
Originally, this wasn't his part. Originally, he was supposed to play the agent.
The agent, yeah.
And then he was forced to play this part. Well, not forced, but he was offered this part because that's what was left. And basically, after this, he's basically typecast as this type of character the rest of his life, it seems like.
We've already done a couple of the Sydney Pollack movies. This might be his best casting up and down the card.
Clearly, without a doubt.
This is tight all the way around. And even though he didn't necessarily want Bill Murray, that's one battle I'm glad Dustin Hoffman won, because Bill Murray is the hero of this movie. Hands down,
He's a saving grace.
the funniest part of the whole movie. If anybody ever wants to know just how brilliant Bill Murray is, almost all of his lines in this movie in
Are
Tootsie,
they ad-libbed?
they're ad-libbed.
Like when he's at the birthday party talking about the
Yeah.
play, People in the Rain.
As far as comedy goes, he's a genius.
I like Bill Murray here, especially because it's not too much Bill Murray. He doesn't take over the movie. He interjects here and there. It starts off perfectly with him eating the food in the restaurant where they're like, hey, that's for the customers. Hey, these people ask me if I eat the food. I can tell them, yes, I eat the food. Perfect Bill Murray right there. And I think it sets the tone for the rest of the movie. He's perfectly cast. There's just the right amount of Bill Murray that doesn't overtake any of the other characters. It's my favorite part of the movie is every time he pops up in the screen.
And he acts like a conduit for the audience. He says what the audience is thinking. It's like he was watching it and then reacting. And that's how he would react as a person in the audience. And then that's a special kind of talent there. But you're right.
Like he did at the end. That's one wacky.
Right.
That's one nutty hospital. He's watching the TV, right?
Right. And you're exactly right, Ken. He's not overpowering. That's another talent. He knows this is not his vehicle, but he knows what he can add to it to make it a good movie. He's really good at this.
Give credit to maybe Sydney Pollack here and making sure everything is kind of well balanced. If I will say anything nice about this movie is it's well balanced between its star and its supporting cast. Like you guys just
Except for the relationship between Pollack and Hoffman. That was a dumpster fire.
You had said that, and you had mentioned that in the spotlight of Sydney Pollack.
The reason why Sydney Pollack actually decided to act in this movie was because of the conflict he was having with Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah, but Dustin Hoffman, to get him to act in it, sent him a rose every day from Dorothy. So, by all accounts that I had read in researching for the movie, it seemed like that they would go into an office.
They'd go into their trailers, and they'd yell and scream for an hour.
And they would yell and scream.
Come out. And do
it Sydney's way.
Yes.
You know, as crazy as it might sound, it kind of has the element of the movie in it.
Mm-hmm.
Where everybody that's on set of the soap opera, it's hard to describe. They're kind of like living on the edge a little bit because of the relationship of the director to the actors. And it's almost like Pollack and Hoffman created that same atmosphere for the overall movie Tootsie. Because, I mean, Dustin Hoffman's notoriously prickly to work with. Let's be perfectly honest.
But the end product is usually gold.
Right. He has some misses, but most of them are hits by far. I kind of got the feeling in doing the research and what people had to say about Pollack and Hoffman yelling at each other. I don't want to come out and just say that maybe they did that to keep everybody else kind of off, not knowing exactly what was going on. But if that was the end result, keeping those actors that were part of the soap opera part of this movie kind of like off balance, it worked because they pull it off perfectly.
I don't think it's that they were trying to do that. I think it's because Sydney Pollack is the third director for this movie. And I think that has a lot to do with Dustin Hoffman. Originally, this was brought up to Buddy Hackett to play the agent.
Thankfully, they dodged that bullet.
Yeah, gratefully they did. But Dustin Hoffman bought the rights, the guy who wrote Tootsie, out of the picture. This is Dustin Hoffman's movie. I mean, we could say Sydney Pollack is the director, and I think Sydney Pollack does a great job of what he's in control of. But when it's all said and done, this is Dustin Hoffman's movie. He's calling all the shots. This is Dustin Hoffman's baby, basically.
Oh, clearly. He wanted to actually literally and figuratively dress up as a woman, be that role, try and make me as pretty as possible. I want to walk down the street of New York and not have people turn their heads and go, oh, that's a guy in drag. He wanted to actually be believable that he was a woman and then wanted to kind of see how it was like to be a woman. I'm sure you guys saw, I think they were on AFI, they had some of the interview because we started crying at the end. Well, I should say crying, but tearing up, emotional, because of some of the abuse that he realized that women were getting in the industry in general.
Yeah, there's a lot of real that came out of this movie, for
But it's
sure.
interesting that because Dustin Hoffman has been accused of sexually advancing on people, and so he's basically being accused of the same thing that he's promoting against in this movie, which is really weird.
Yeah, that's a whole nother issue
That's a
getting
different,
into about
that's a different
that.
podcast.
And I'm not
Let's
saying
talk-
that he's that way. I mean, we don't know that to be factual. We know him to be difficult. We talked about it with Meryl Streep, that he made Meryl Streep cry. I mean, Meryl Streep is the greatest actress of our generation, and if you make Meryl Streep cry, what does that say about you as an actor?
Scared the hell out of her.
He might have made her cry, but when he was doing the lead up for Tootsie, he and another actress in his apartment would do scenes from Streetcar Named Desire. And the only person who was part of that little group was Meryl Streep. She was the first person to actually see Michael's character of Deborah.
Let's shift gears a little bit here. Let's talk about some of these actors here. This is a very interesting cast, and it's an interesting cast for many reasons. And I want to lead in a little bit about the Academy Awards of 1983. So you have an interesting scenario here. This movie was nominated for many, many awards. Dustin Hoffman, obviously nominated for Best Actor. I think deservedly so. That year, you had Paul Newman in The Verdict, you had Ben Kingsley for Gandhi, you had Jack Lemmon for Missing, and Ken, your favorite, Peter O'Toole, my favorite year. Kingsley wins, obviously, for Gandhi. Do you think Dustin Hoffman maybe should have won for this role, or do you really think Kingsley should have walked away with it? Yes, Gandhi's a great movie, but I really think Dustin Hoffman maybe should have got the award for this one.
The Academy is notorious for loving...
I know. They hate comedies. I know. I know that. I mean,
they're notorious for that, but they're also very notorious for if you play a real life person and you inhabit that person on film, they are notorious for just eating that up with a knife and fork.
You have Gandhi, a real person, and then you have the actor portrays him. If he does the job where it's believable, where you thought, hey, this guy is Gandhi, it's easier to give him an award in that situation.
Ben Kingsley was phenomenal in that role. Anything away from Ben Kingsley on that, but I just think Dustin Hoffman portraying a woman in this role and the way it was portrayed and throughout the whole movie, I honestly thought he should have got Best Actor. But I know, you're absolutely right, Ted. There's no way in hell he would have gotten this award.
That's tough because look at the people that were
I know.
that
These
you just mentioned.
These are hitters.
You're talking about these are elite people.
Even Peter O'Toole?
Oh yeah, especially Peter O'Toole. I'm a Peter O'Toole fan as well.
Kidding.
He falls into that category of one of the great overlooks in Academy Awards history. I know the Golden Globes get poo-pooed upon a lot, but in my opinion, the Golden Globes kind of act as more of a viewer type of award. They
Golden
see
Globes
things
are Hollywood Foreign Press, aren't they?
The Hollywood Foreign Press.
Yeah.
Now, Dustin Hoffman did win the Golden Globe, and he also won the BAFTA award.
There's a tie between him and Michael Caine for Educating Rita.
Oh, well, there you go.
You have to have a Brit win. That's
So those are some big awards as well. I think the movie was rightfully put in with the rest of those movies. I mean, it takes a lot for a comedy to get included in the Academy Awards.
Especially under numerous nominations.
Yeah, because they take themselves, whether or not you believe it's pretentious or not, they take themselves very, very seriously. And comedy has a way of not getting its way into the nominations.
Kind of like science fiction, too.
They so don't like science fiction that they gave it its own night on a different night in a different place and then do just a quick clip during the awards show about all of the technical awards.
Yeah.
So that's how much they don't like science fiction. James Cameron had to make a movie about Titanic to get himself an Academy Award when he probably should have been nominated for a couple of his other movies, Aliens being one of them. But that's neither here nor there. We could go on for hours about the Academy Awards. But
on top of the Academy Awards, this movie kind of also fits into Academy Awards agendas sometimes. I mean, we talked about the Victor Victoria. We talked about Terry Garr and Jessica Lange being nominated for this role, but we also had nominations from Victor Victoria.
Leslie Ann Warren, actually.
Oh, I think she played...
the girlfriend of James Gardner's.
Yeah, I think Julie Andrews played Victor Victoria on
But how
Broadway.
about two people being nominated for Best Supporting Actress from the same movie? I'm drawing a blank. Has that ever happened before?
Yeah,
I'm sure it has. Yeah, I think
Has
it's happened a couple of times recently here, but it is a rare thing that does happen
I
occasionally.
actually think that these nominations are a tad overrated, to be honest with you. I mean, I just don't feel. I mean, we talked about Dustin Hoffman's nomination, but Jessica Lange won. Not saying that she didn't do a good job. I thought she did a great job, but
I would
I just
agree. I
don't.
like Terry Garr better.
I may like Terry Garr better, but I don't even think Terry Garr deserves it, to be honest with you, as well. I feel like they're good roles, but are they really great roles to have won an Academy Award? I just don't see it. I
How
just
about a
don't.
year for Jessica Lange, nominated for Best
Mhm.
Actress in Frances? You going up against Meryl Streep and Sophie's Choice. Good luck. And
Yeah, good luck with that one.
And then Julie Andrews, of course, Victor Victoria, which I have never seen. Was it Deborah Winger who won it, or was it Meryl Streep? I'm drawing a blank.
Let me look here.
Dun, 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 dun,
Missing,
dun, dun,
Sissy
dun.
Spacek. I mean, it was a banner year for Jessica Lange. I mean, she's a great actress, obviously, but I would agree. I don't think she was Best Supporting Actress caliber material for Tootsie.
Yeah, I liked them both in this movie. I like we
Oh,
said in
yeah.
the cast. The cast is perfect. When we were talking about how Rob Reiner picks out a cast for a movie, this is kind of like a Rob Reiner cast where everybody's the right person for the job. I love the cast.
I mean, if we're talking about the cast of the movie and nominations, of course you had Jessica Lange and then you had Terry Garr, but you also, Charles Durning was nominated for a different movie. So you have multiple nominations. And of course, Dustin Hoffman is an Academy Award winner. So the cast is pretty superb.
Pretty strong cast, indeed.
It's one of the strongest parts of the whole movie. As far as not being worthy of the nomination and or the win, that's so objective. And that's part of the problem with the Academy Awards. We don't have a say in it. It's voted on by the people who make the movies and the actors and actresses who make up the Academy. That's how they saw it. And sometimes they do give the occasional gift.
The nod.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that might have been that they knew that there's no way Tootsie was going to win either Best Picture or Best Actor, but they wanted to give it some acclaim. So you just never know what went into those decisions.
It's all political. There's always things that are going on. Like I talked about this with you guys in the past. For instance, you have Denzel Washington who gets it for Training Day for Best Actor when clearly he should have got it from Malcolm X. And not saying he wasn't good in Training Day, but he far more deserved it more for Malcolm X than he did for Training Day. So sometimes they have to adjust based on the politicalness of the Academy Awards, basically.
And by political, you don't mean political like politics. It's more about the politics of the industry.
Right, the politics of the industry.
Yeah, you just don't know what is going through the people who are voting, what's going through their mind. That's part of what makes the Academy Awards what they are. This isn't an Academy Awards podcast. I mean, I could talk about the Academy Awards and their mistakes and what stuff that they got right for hours on end.
I prefer SAG Awards, but I don't think the SAG Awards were actually a thing at this particular time.
No, they weren't.
Of course, this cast has one of my favorite character actors, and that's Charles Durning. He plays this sweet old man who lost his wife. What I like about this character is, I mean, it's kind of odd that he's interested in Dorothy, but he kind of balances that relationship with his wife who died and the relationship he's having with Dorothy. And he's kind of balancing the two. And I kind of liked how he recognized that he was married and that was the love of his life, but he is interested in Dorothy as well. I thought he played that very well.
He did. But Dorothy is a likable character.
Yeah, but I mean, my problem with this movie, of course, is nobody in the world in this movie sees him as a man. I'm sorry, it's just no. I mean, even Dustin Hoffman says, I couldn't make her attractive because I'm a man, and there's no way that I could make her attractive. I can get away with impersonating her as a woman, but to make her attractive in any ways, I couldn't do it, he said.
But when doing the research, if you look at all of the times, he actually fooled people. He fooled his kid's teacher.
Yeah.
I mean, he fooled one of his best friends. He comes off as believable, but I understand what you're saying. You have to give some sort of grace to the movie and kind of play along.
To a certain extent, yes, but not to a movie that has been nominated for Academy Awards, because you're saying that I have to accept.
Let's be honest. It's Dustin Hoffman. He's not even an attractive man. Let's be honest here. You're going to dress him up as a woman. You're not going to make him look like Suzanne Summers or something. I mean, it's Dustin Hoffman, and you're not going to make him look like a rock star. Or,
Oh, they make fun of that, like with the cameraman. How far can you pull back?
Yeah.
How do you
Out
think
of
She's
Cleveland,
homely.
yeah.
She's very homely. Yeah.
Yes, but there's things that you would probably notice, like Adam's apple. You have to throw a lot of believability out the window. If you push that off and just enjoy it for what it is, then that's fine. My problem is it's just hard to do it. And then there's been so many more imitations of this type of movie throughout the years. They don't even come close to pulling it off like Tootsie does.
Right. It may suffer a little bit from that, but you also have to then hold this movie up as this is how it was done right. And everybody else has kind of just screwed it up, essentially. You can't downgrade this movie for what some of the abominations that have come after it. That's not fair. And to throw the last thing on the Academy Awards aren't necessarily, it's how the movie was made. And is it a good movie? And it is a good movie. It's not whether or not you believe that he's really a woman or anything of that nature. Is it a good movie?
But
And it was made really well. And it didn't win for best screenplay. It didn't win any of those type of awards. Probably because of that particular point, what you're making. But as far as being a well-made movie, you can't deny that this isn't a well-made movie.
No, it's a well-made movie. But my problem, there is problems with this movie, because we take this Dorothy character and we're like, what an amazing character. But let's put it this way: the original character of Michael is a sexist guy as well. And in the beginning of the movie, when they're celebrating his birthday, he's hitting on every single woman.
Using the same lines, too.
Yeah,
I mean, you're right. He is. Yes.
Yeah. But then you have him walk into his dressing room as Dorothy, and then you have Gina Davis's character in her underwear, and he stays around and has conversations. And I'm just sitting here and going, this is so wrong right now. The problem is he gets away with that. He gets away with imitating a woman and fooling Charles Durning. There doesn't seem to be any type of repercussion that we see for him faking out everybody. Even at the end, it's tied up with a bow. Him and Jessica Lange are walking down chatting and stuff like nothing had happened. It's just too convenient at the end that everything worked out. And there should be a lot of bad things that happened to him based on all the stuff that he did.
Yeah, it is a Hollywood ending. He never gets the comeuppance for what he did. And I think it's a tribute to the movie, though, and to Dustin Hoffman, that when he is playing Deborah and he does walk into the dressing room and the actresses are in their underwear and whatever, he never plays it off like Porky's. It never goes to the lowest common denominator for a joke.
It actually hits his head because he feels like he shouldn't be in there.
It's kind of like those movies where the character realizes, almost kind of like a Christmas Carol, where Scrooge gets to see how everything's wrong and then he has a change of heart. It's kind of a similar kind of storyline where the main character goes on this journey and he's able to see things that nobody else can see because he's doing something that nobody would have ever have thought to do. And so he's given a behind-the-scenes look at how crappy and misogynistic and just downright awful how they're being treated. And so he does have a change of heart. But you're right, he never gets the comeuppance that is so richly deserved for his ruse.
The agent tells him when they're walking down the street, he's like, I want to play these parts. I want to talk about women's rights and things of that nature. And he's like, you're not a woman. But he's like, but I'm an actress. And he's trying to play it off like he knows how to talk for the woman. The George Gaines part where, he's trying to basically rape her. Outside of that, do I really see her character being mistreated, except for maybe Dabney Coleman's character calling her Toots or Tootsie or Hun or anything like that? Outside of that, you don't see him sexually harassing her. You don't see the things that the other characters have to go through.
It's not just a sexual harassment. There's the little things about when, after he meets his agent at the Russian tea room and, gives him the $1,000 to buy all the outfits and the makeup and everything. When he's talking with Jeff, he's like, I don't understand how a woman can make it today. It's so expensive to keep yourself all in the latest clothes, the makeup and stuff. And then the scene where he's trying to get the cab and the man tries to steal the cab from him and he just kicks him out and hits him with all the bags and stuff. It's kind of showing how women are taken advantage of. It's
I just
really,
think that guy was just being a jerk, and it would have done it to anybody that was
it's
trying to
typical
get
New York, but you have a woman with a bunch of bags, and then this guy kind of just sneaks into the cab.
I don't think that he actually really goes through the pains of what a woman probably goes through as an
Of
actress.
course not. No, but his eyes are open. He's seen it. This is not like a trial or something.
So here's a good example. He takes the line that she gives him about to get in bed with her, and he uses it on her.
Yeah.
He doesn't learn anything about how to treat women.
He hasn't had his epiphany at that moment.
But he does. Because here's the thing. The part that I just mentioned about him walking down the street with his agent about how he wants to talk about women's rights, that happens after he talks with his agent about how he wants to advocate for women's rights. He does that line with Jessica Lange's character because he invites him to the party after that. He still doesn't get it. When does he really get it? I just don't know if he ever really does. He says he does.
Infatuated with her, though. Let's be honest.
Yeah, exactly. And then he comes on with her when he's actually Dorothy, and then she thinks she's a lesbian.
I think that he finally gets it when the main doctor character does try to essentially rape him, and then he gets it when Jessica Lange's father, Charles Durning's character, proposes to him.
It's very creepy that two men really find him attractive. That's a little bit of the unbelievable part.
See, Charles Durning's character is
a lonely man.
He's a lonely guy. His wife has died. He's a widower. I think he's one of the most self-aware people in the entire movie. He knows what he is. He knows he's probably not the most attractive person in the world. He's looking for companionship. His attraction to Deborah is not physical. He actually enjoys spending time with her and talking with her. That's where that whole attraction comes from. It's being too superficial just to say, well, he's not attractive. No, he's not attractive. Would he have probably gotten the role on the soap opera? Probably not. And sing soap operas? Definitely not. That's part of the journey you have to go on with the movie.
I just don't know if I agree with that his character really ever knows what it's like to be a woman. I understand what you're saying.
That night he does.
Well, that night, but you were just bringing up Charles Durning's character, Les. He's very nice to her. He doesn't ever come across.
No,
he never goes.
But he knows that there's real feelings involved. This all leads into my favorite scene of the movie is right after he proposes to Deborah, and then Sandy comes over to the apartment, and they have that interaction. That's when Dustin Hoffman goes to see his agent at his home. And while that scene is absolutely hilarious, that's where Dustin Hoffman's character, he realizes that he is playing with real life emotions. That's the changing point for that character, in my opinion, because he knows now, I can't continue this because people are going to legitimately get really hurt if I continue.
He wanted off the show.
Right. Yeah. He's done because he knows that there's real consequences for what he's doing now.
Even at the end, the way he comes out, he doesn't do it for everybody else. He still does it for him. The way he does it is on the live show, so it saves face, so it makes it look like it was all written in and nobody's going to have egg on their face. But he's not thinking about the other characters like Julie. He's not thinking about anybody else. The only person I think he's thinking about, again, is him. And even towards the end, when he's trying to get back with her, he's really only thinking about, I want to have a relationship with her. I need to figure out a way to get back in. I do think it's still a selfish character. Even at the end, when he's supposedly learned his lesson, I'm not sure if he really has. I just don't buy it.
I'm not going to argue that he's a selfish character because he is. I mean, that's the bottom line. The only reason he does what he does is because he's burned every bridge out there, because he's prima donna that was never a prima donna.
I mean, look what he does to Terry Garr's character, Sandy, throughout the whole film. I mean,
that's horrible. It's horrible. He treats her like crap.
Yeah, basically all the way to the end until he basically tells her that he's in love with another woman. And, she's like great about it. I mean, eventually, I guess she still stars in his play afterwards with them. So I guess they work out that relationship, but you don't even get to see that. You don't even get to see the repair of the relationship after that. I don't know. I just feel like it's a little too Hollywood, wrapped up in a bow and not explaining a lot of things. And then you want to tell me that this movie is Oscar worthy. And I'm just like, no, it's not Oscar worthy. It's a nice popcorn film to watch. It is not anything that transcends movies or transcends this type of genre.
I disagree with you. I disagree, but I agree. I'm not crazy about the ending. I feel you're right. Hollywood did tie it up in a nice, neat bow, and everything's all hunky-dory, and they walk off down the street hand in hand, and let's call it a day. But I think this is very much an Oscar-worthy movie. I don't know if it should win Best Picture with some of the competition, but I feel it definitely deserved the nomination.
I agree with everything you just said. You summed it up perfectly. That's how I feel. It's a good movie. It's not going to be like super great, but you also have to remember too, like I said, it was part of the top 100 greatest movies by the American Film Institute.
Which would classify it as great, which I don't get. I don't get it. I'm not saying it's not a bad movie. I'm leaning towards liking it. But what I'm saying here is this movie is not a game changer. Maybe in 1982, maybe it was. I'm only 10 years old in 1982. I'm just trying to get my math and my English and everything in elementary, junior high school taken care of at that particular time. So I'm not invested in these type of movies at that moment. So I don't know 1982 how that feels. I really don't. But watching it now, I feel like the movie's dated. Don't get me started on the score of this movie. This has got to be the most horrible score.
That's going to come up. Let's stay away from the score for a second. But as far as being dated, there are things that are dated.
Of course there are. There was stuff dated in 3 Days of the Condor. Let's be honest.
Exactly.
You can't get around that.
We're looking at stuff with 2021 eyes on a movie that was made in 1982. So there's going to be things that are going to be dated. I mean,
this is a 1982 movie that's glossing over the issue of women being treated differently in the movie television industry. I think it's actually really glossing over it for 1982, and I think that's because I have 2021 eyes.
There are a lot of moments though that it does hit it on the head. Roger Ebert was right. It's not overly preachy because let's be perfectly honest. If this movie was preachy, you would yell at it for being preachy. It's preachy, but then it follows up with...
It's a lighthearted comedy.
It is. There is a lot of satire there that comes through that exposes some things, but then tries to keep it light. My favorite scene, like I said, is the scene where Michael's character goes to see Sydney Pollack, his agent, and he's just had this night where somebody tried to rape him, somebody proposed to him, and the person who was one of his best friends, who he had a relationship with, has left him. And Sydney Pollack plays the role of the agent perfectly, and it never gets too ham-handed. I mean, it could get real deep, but they keep it just light enough where that scene makes me laugh out loud every time, especially the moment where Michael tells his agent, well, he proposed to me. And Sydney Pollack looks at him and says, well, what did you say? And it makes me laugh every time because Sydney Pollack plays that as deadpan, and all of a sudden he's invested into this big life soap opera that Michael's going through. Michael turns his own life into a soap opera. And to say that it's not consequential, General Hospital, the soap opera, actually did the whole reveal thing of a guy dressing up as a woman. After Tootsie, they used that in their actual show.
Well, why wouldn't they have? I would too. You're gonna jump on the coattails.
My mom loved soap operas. I grew up watching soap operas, watching Days of Our Lives. And so the parts of the soap opera, it makes me laugh because you see how absurd the soap opera is.
Well, in 1982, soap operas are a big deal because not everybody in 1982 has cable. So basically, during the daytime, you're stuck with all these soap opera shows.
It's like that scene in Mr. Mom, remember? He's just totally obsessed with the soap opera.
Yep.
Great.
And I understand what you're saying, Ted. And that scene's a great scene. I love the banter of, were you a lesbian? Were you Michael?
Right?
Who were you? It was like a who's on first kind of going back and forth.
Exactly.
They did that perfectly. And like I said, the performance here are really good. I just felt like towards the end of the movie, they threw a lot of things at you and then tied it up really quickly with a Hollywood bow. And they didn't really tackle those things that would make it an Oscar-worthy type of movie. That's my biggest problem with this. This movie, I think, is just a little too overly celebrated. I don't know how it's a top 100 AFI movie of all time. For me, it doesn't seem to be that important. Is it a good film? It probably is a good film. I just feel like it's put on a bigger pedestal than it should be. And for a top 100 AFI movie, we just talked about it, it barely ever gets played.
If we're going to go that route, there's some of those top 100 movies that don't get played at all. One of them, being A Birth of a Nation, has been completely blacklisted.
The 1921 or
the 19 was a 1915 version. D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation that was shown in the White House, and Woodrow Wilson said that it was just how it was. Yeah, that Birth of a Nation, that you cannot buy that movie because it's so racist.
Yeah, but
it's a story of the Klan is what
Sure.
it is.
But you're now comparing Tootsie to Birth of a Nation.
No, that's what you did. They don't get played.
because Tootsie is the top 100 movie of all time.
Okay. I listened to an interview with Spike Lee talking about when he was at NYU. These movies that are considered great, okay, and Birth of a Nation is considered a great movie for the filmmaking that went into it. When Spike Lee was talking, they showed that movie, Birth of a Nation, to his class as far as how movies have progressed, and this was a great movie. It was an epic movie for the time, and it was considered an epic as to the grand scale of something like the Ten Commandments or Ben-Hur. That's what they're talking about with A Birth of a Nation. And what he did was then he took what was taught to him during that class and then elaborated on it afterwards. And he said, yes, was it horrible? It is horrible. But the people still understand why it was shown. Tootsie's a good movie. It deserves to be where it's at. We're not talking about a top 25 movie of all time. It deserves its credit because it is very funny. It's a good movie. And the performances are really well done. And I think your biggest criticism of the movie, the last part of it, is probably the reason that it's so muddled is because there ended up being like 6 writers. You had a lot of cooks in the kitchen, for lack of a better metaphor.
I brought up the AFI Top 100 while you're looking at it. And here's some movies that fall after Tootsie. Saving Private Ryan, The Shawshank Redemption, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, All the President's Men, Modern Times.
The Chevy Chase movie?
No, Modern Times with
Charlie Chaplin.
It's a joke, I know.
No. Platoon, one of your favorite movies, Ted, 12 Angry Men. I mean, I just don't feel like this movie fits in this listing here.
Would you feel better, Ken, if it was like number 99 or 98? Feel it's not a top 100?
I would have to basically look at movies in general just to see where I would think it would fall. Because why does it fall into the top 100? Here are the top 70. What's so great about this movie that puts it where it's at? Is it because it tackles that subject, which I don't think it tackles very well? I think it glosses over that subject matter.
No, I think it's just an overall good movie. You look at the writing, well, the writing can be kind of hit or miss. There are certain scenes that make it good, but you look at the directing, you look at the acting is superb.
Yeah.
The cast is incredible, let's be honest. Yeah.
This is an amazing cast. They do so well with the stuff that's given them. Or in Bill Murray's case, what he came up with off of the top of his head. As a movie, I don't think you can really deny it. When we decided we were going to do this movie, this wasn't a movie. I would never have given it a second thought. But now, having watched it numerous times in a brief period of time in preparation, I appreciate it. Now, if you want to go to criticisms of the movie, biggest criticism I have of the entire movie is the score. It's atrocious. The songs,
Not a Stephen Bishop fan, huh?
how that song got nominated for an Academy Award. There mustn't have been any other songs in any other movie that could have taken its place because it's borderline trash. It takes me out of the movie at points where it's just so bad. So if we want to have criticisms, the criticism for me is the score by far. There's 2 major songs, and both of them are equally as bad.
I don't agree with them both being equally as bad. I'm not.
Oh, they are. Then they use them in the typical 80s montage scene.
The Go Tootsie Go song is atrocious. It's really, really bad. And
it's garbage.
In itself, that song should take this out of the top AFI 100. So
but it's of the era. It's 1982. And I'll be honest, I like Stephen Bishop because I played his music for 7 years. And it's kind of like an indoctrination camp, for it was beaten into my head. I mean, you play that in Christopher Cross, I'm a happy man. So I have a problem. I know that.
Me and Ted were talking about this offline. 3 Days of the Condor and Tootsie shouldn't have the same type of feel of music.
Yep, and they sure do. The Sydney Pollack must have liked this guy because he's also the guy who scores The Firm, which we're going to be doing next.
Well, how about that? Yeah.
Is it interesting that the one that he got the Academy Award for was the one that was scored by this guy? He scored all of the other movies for Sydney Pollack, but he didn't score Out of Africa, which wins the Academy Award.
Exactly. And here's the thing. I'm not asking for everybody to be John Williams or Howard Shore or Hans Zimmer, but my Lord, it couldn't be any worse. If you had a guy with a glockenspiel running around doing the score of the movie, it would be just as equally as bad.
It's of the era, my man. It's of the era. It's 1982.
And I feel bad for you that you're comfortable with Christopher Cross.
Oh, you can do a whole podcast of my indoctrination of cheesy 70s and 80s music, man. It's beaten into my head.
There's a lot of movies out there in the 70s and 80s that don't have this crappy type of score.
The one that won the Academy Award for Best Song, Up Where We Belong from An Officer and a Gentleman, that's a good song.
Yeah, it's a very good song, but even it has its 82 cheese. Let's be honest.
It's Joe Cocker.
It's Joe Cocker. It's Jennifer Lawrence.
But there's a lot of songs out there. Like I look at 1981's Arthur, and now that song is very 80ish.
Christopher Cross, baby.
But I prefer that song though over stuff here in Tootsie. The songs here in Tootsie are just. And I don't agree with Ted with both songs, but Go Tootsie Go. I mean, it's
bad. Yes,
that's bad. It's so horrible. Bad.
You said you have to look at this at 1982 goggles. Christopher Cross won the Grammys in 1979. Okay, he couldn't do wrong. Then he did Arthur. Okay, again, couldn't do wrong. After that, he fell off the face of the planet. But 81, 82, you had anything that even resembled Christopher Cross, and that's Stephen Bishop. You're gold.
The Grammys also gave Grammys to Michael McDonald, too. So let's don't be holding up the Grammys as the beacon of hope.
I know. I'm just saying that music sold millions and millions millions of copies. Yes, it's cheese, all right? But at that time, it was gold cheese.
As a kid, I loved soundtracks. I loved the Top Gun soundtrack. Kenny Loggins was the man.
Kenny Loggins wasn't doing soundtracks in 82. He was still with Messina.
Yeah, he was still with Messina. But it did get better as the 80s went
along. Talk about some of Kenny Loggins' earlier stuff from the late 70s.
He did the song for Caddyshack, too.
Yes, he did. He did some stuff that was right up there with your Christopher Cross, too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, definitely. Yeah. There's just no way I could ever listen to this soundtrack by itself. It is so cringeworthy.
Well, now I know what I'm getting Ted for Christmas.
For Christmas, yeah. The Tootsie soundtrack.
Tootsie soundtrack.
God, it is probably out there somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I'm sure I'm looking.
You guys already mentioned this, that the score was nominated for a Grammy. So, yeah. I mean, it's like, where was the thoughts here in 1982 with anything? I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I gotta get this music out of my head. This is nastiness. And I'll keep on bringing that Go Tootsie Go song. That thing is, it's not that he did it once. They brought it back multiple times during the movie.
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah, they did. Oh,
Yes.
they so did.
They milked it. Oh, they did.
How can you?
Somebody thought that was gold.
It's like milking something and all it's come out is sourness, and you keep on milking it, and it's just sour milk, and it's just ew. Stop it.
It hurts the ears.
Yeah.
Ted, would you like it on cassette, vinyl, or
Oh, Lord.
CD?
8-track.
Oh Lord. Yeah, 8-track.
And 82, probably not 8-track.
Probably not
You're
8-track,
phasing them
yeah.
out. Let me know. I'll get back
All
to you.
right. We have to keep it a little bit light. It was getting a little too
light.
little too dark, but yeah, this score. This is something. I might come at it from this perspective too. When you look at the movies that we've done here previously, they've been so well scored. You look at the Cameron Crowe movies, they're expertly done. In some of the other movies that we've talked about, it's hard to come when you see something. It's so egregious, and the movie overcomes the score. I don't know who thought that was a good idea.
Sydney Pollack.
1982 thought it was a good idea.
Yeah, I guess.
I'm telling you, they were riding on the Christopher Cross coattails. I guarantee it.
Those are some coattails.
They were at that time.
But
Yeah.
it was a long coattail because, like I said, we hear it in 3 Days of the Condor, and here we are in 1982, and we're kind of still hearing it. Not the songs, but the score itself. We're still hearing the same type of sounds. It's so dated, even at that particular time. We better get off the subject because we can go on for hours about this score. And you guys are right. It succeeds in spite of the score. Maybe this is one of those things that actually downgrades this movie for me is the score itself. Because why would I want to put my ears through hearing this crap?
I don't know.
That's because I wouldn't. You know what? I still like to talk a little bit more about Bill Murray. Bill Murray, I don't think we did enough justice for it. I mean, we were talking offline about how his deadpan approach just works so well in this movie.
Dustin Hoffman is so neurotic. He's kind of like the yin and yang. Never shows any emotion, just always cool and laid back. The voice of reason, let's be honest.
Right.
Is great. Hell, I would have liked to seen him nominated for a supporting actor, to be honest with you.
I would have been kind of okay with that because every time he's on screen, he steals the movie. And that's what I think a best supporting actor or actress does, steals scenes from the lead.
I agree with you and everything you said about praising Bill Murray in the movie. And I agree somewhat with what you're saying about the awards, but don't discount Jessica Lange in this movie. She's really good in this character, and Terry Garr is really good in this movie as well. I think they deserved their nomination.
I don't know about Terry Garr only because, and it's not because of her acting performance, is how much screen time they give her after a third of the movie is over. We don't even hear from her after he finds out that he's in love with somebody else. But even between missing dinner dates and stuff like that, the amount of lines they give her for that period of time are very small. And they're more about whining and crying. And he even says, don't apologize to me. I'm the one that came late and
missed dinner.
And once he becomes Dorothy, they don't give Terry Garr a lot to work with. So I don't agree with giving her that nomination just because I don't think they gave her enough meat on the bone to support that.
Her character, though, is the character I feel the worst for.
Yeah.
I feel so bad for her. I mean, she does a good enough job that she makes me feel something for her character.
She keeps taking the abuse.
She does.
And she knows it too. She says that throughout the whole time. I know what's going to happen. And it does. Whatever she said was going to happen, it happened. He basically slept with her. Of course, he didn't want to originally, but he did it anyway because supposedly that's the best way to get out of him having his clothes off, I guess, just because he wanted to put on a dress. And then after that, you look at it as he misses these dinner dates. He gets her part that she wanted. And she's actually upset about it. And all he cares about, oh, you think she's fat? It's that self-absorbed stuff. He doesn't care that she's upset because this is the part that she wanted. He doesn't even concern himself with how upset she is about this. He doesn't see past his own self. And again, I go back to what I said earlier. I don't think he ever gets past that.
Hard to argue with that. I mean, you are kind of right.
Yeah, it's definitely not a perfect character. There's no doubt about that. He is very self-absorbed. There is an arc to the character. And to say that there's no arc to his character, I don't believe that that's true. I guess the thing that makes the movie, it's a good story.
It's a great story and it's a great cast, and it is blended together perfectly. The flow from start to 95% of the movie is great. The ending I'm not crazy about, but I'm willing to overlook it. I guess you could leave it open for a sequel the way that movie ended,
Yeah,
kinda.
no, I don't.
You're not, but
Yeah. Mercifully, the 80s didn't sequelize the movie, but
Tootsie
because
2, Electric
good
Boogaloo.
God knows that they adapted numerous movies that shouldn't have been given sequels.
Tootsie
Caddyshack.
2, The Revenge of Sandy Lester.
Yeah,
Right.
right. At the end of the day, we have to remember that these are stories. They're stories that are being put on film.
It's a great story.
The characters have arcs. Most of the characters are interesting, even if you don't necessarily like Michael's character.
But does
Very
anybody learn anything? We're talking about this, and you all think that Dustin Hoffman has learned something, and maybe he has, but I still think that even at the end, all he's caring about is getting back with the Julie Nichols character and try to make that work, because that's all he cares about. Does Ron Carlyle, the director, learn anything from it? No.
No, but he's a character that's never going to learn.
Any other character in this movie have this, like, wow, I need to change the way I approach women?
I think you're also asking a lot of a comedy.
Dustin Hoffman says that he doesn't believe this to be a comedy.
Well, I think Dustin Hoffman is wrong.
Dustin Hoffman is, like we have said, he's very eccentric. Dustin Hoffman thinks very highly of Dustin Hoffman, and he's not shy about liking Dustin Hoffman.
And it shows in Michael Dorsey. I think Michael Dorsey is basically
I think that's why he works as Michael Dorsey, because Michael Dorsey is kind of an asshole.
Michael Dorsey thinks he is the greatest actor of all time. Everyone else is wrong.
I think that he is more humble at the end, realizes that he has to change, and that's why he says, and even though it's wrapped up with one line, I think that line is meaningful, where he says, I was a better man as a woman, or whatever the exact line is.
And she ends it with, I miss Dorothy.
Right.
Her best friend. She wants her best friend
Dorothy's still inside here, and Dorothy misses you.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. I think the scene that bothers me the most is when he uses the line on her to try to go to bed with her.
There should have been repercussions for that.
He used her information to try to go to bed with her, and I'm sorry, he didn't learn anything. And that's actually 2/3 into the movie.
If you want to say that there's a big problem with any particular character, it's the fact that Terry Garr's character in that moment didn't realize that that was exactly what she had said to Dorothy and made the connection that Michael was Dorothy. If you want to talk about the biggest point of disbelief, I even think the way that they costumed him by putting the scarves and stuff to hide the Adam's apple, I think they did a good enough job to make him a believable enough woman. But it's when he uses something that was said in private.
The exact line.
It was exactly the fact that she doesn't get that, and why that wasn't brought up in the writer's room or in the collaboration of the writers, that why she doesn't even have a tinge of curiosity as to how that came forward. That's a problem. I'm not going to submarine the entire movie for that one problem.
It's a big problem. And the fact that she doesn't go to Dorothy and say, hey, we had that conversation the other night. Strange enough, a guy came along and actually kind of used that line on me.
And he kind of looked like you.
And it kind of looked like it. And that's the other thing is, these people are getting really close up to looking at him and they're not seeing similarities.
I know.
But this is why I just having these problems with this character. And I think again, it's a well-made movie, but seriously, it's not a top 100 movie of all time. I think there could have been more done. If he would have walked up to her and wanted to use that line and then, started saying something and then stopped realizing, you know what, I care about this girl. That would have told me all of a sudden that he is starting to mature. I don't really see the matureness at all until you tie it up in a bow with the lines at the end of the movie. I don't see the maturity until then. Everything else is all about Michael.
The AFI list is an interesting point. I'm not sure what the date of that list is. I don't know if it's a couple of years old.
Wasn't it?
Anytime you have a list of 100 movies, you got to take that with a grain of salt, because number one, it's based on movies that you've seen or haven't seen. For example, if we're talking Dustin Hoffman, do you guys like Midnight Cowboy?
I've not actually seen it.
I think it's one of the worst movies ever made. I think it's horrible. There's no redeeming quality in that movie, but people love it. It probably is on the AFI list too. I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't. It's all in the eye of the beholder. It really is. In my opinion, this is a top 100 movie for me. Is it 67? No. It's probably more in the 80s or 90s, but that's going to involve going through a lot of movies. But it's probably a top 100, maybe top 150. But like, Ken, for you, probably put every Star Trek movie ever made ahead of it.
Not the fifth one.
Okay. And Ted, you probably put all the well, I don't know if you put all the Star Wars movies ahead of it, but you see where I'm going here. It's in the eye of the beholder. Okay, well, let's talk about our reviews here. Let's start off with Ken. Ken, what did you think of the movie?
I feel like I've been tearing this movie to shreds a little bit.
Yeah, it kind of has.
I just see that there's problems with this movie that I can't get past. The biggest one actually being the score. The score is atrocious. It would be better if they just didn't have a score in this movie. The other problem I also have is buying Dustin Hoffman as a woman. The fact that I have to throw that out the window is problematic for me to consider this a great movie. It's still a good movie. It's still one that you can sit down and have popcorn and just chill out and enjoy. If it was on cable or whatever, I probably would watch a little bit of it. It does what it needs to do. It entertains. It's an entertaining movie, but it's not great. It's not great at all. And I think it glosses over everything that people, make it sound great. This movie is such a revolutionary movie, and it's not a revolutionary movie. It skims over a lot in 1982. And maybe it had to. At that day and age, we were just starting the beginning of maybe looking at how women are treated in the industry. I don't know if 1982 is the tipping point, if it was much earlier than that, but this movie does tackle it in a very light way. I disagree with Dustin Hoffman. This is a comedy. He could tell me that's trying to say something. I don't think it's saying a whole lot. But again, entertaining. And as much as we want to rip on Dustin Hoffman for being maybe a jerk based on some of the things we've heard and read, he does pick out the right things here. He does make Pollack become his agent in the movie. Great move. He does force Bill Murray as his roommate, and that's perfectly cast. So everything Dustin Hoffman wanted for it to work in this film does work. You have to give him credit. And he is a great actor. I mean, he is fun to watch at the beginning of the movie doing all these roles that he's trying to go out for. I kind of appreciate it. Kind of funny that he quits a play because it didn't make sense to him. But then right after that, he's teaching a class and lectures his students about never walking away from roles, to always have a job. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But the character is not very likable. The supporting cast are great. I love all of them. They're very young. Gina Davis is in this movie, and we didn't talk much about her. Though granted, half of the movie is her in her underwear. So
that's pretty much all she did in it. So
yeah, but this cast is very talented. So probably a B-.
So just out of curiosity, if it didn't have the movie score, what would you give it?
Possibly a B.
All right, so the music score played that big of a role for you. Okay.
Yeah, probably just downgraded it a grade.
Okay. I disagree with everything you've said in your review, and you're dead to me now. I just want to let you know that. The only thing I agreed with you on is that, yes, Dustin Hoffman is full of it. This is a comedy. It's kind of funny that me and Ken pretty much are on the complete opposite ends of the spectrum, which is cool if you think about it. But for me, this is a wonderfully done movie. I think the Michael Dorsey character is very lovable because he's not lovable. That's why I love him, is because he is an ass. It's exactly what you want him to be. It's exactly what he should be. The rest of the cast, supporting cast, is phenomenal. I think this movie flows perfectly from beginning to mostly end. My one criticism is the ending. Ken, you hit it right on the head, saying that, Hollywood tied this up into a nice bow and closed it out. I couldn't have said it perfectly myself, and I don't think that gives it any street cred for them doing that. I think they could have done a lot more. But other than that, this movie is incredible. I like the movie score. It's 1982. It's cheesy. It's stupid. It's supposed to be. We're looking at it from 30 some odd years down the road. I mean, think of some of the movies you've seen from the 60s and 70s that have really bad scores in them, or just out of date. Something you're like, I can't believe they're wearing, a plaid suit and that tie and stuff. You just got to look at it for the era. And I think for the era, the musical score, like we've talked about, is right on. It is exactly what you'd expect for late 1982. I just love this movie. I think it is a lighthearted comedy. I don't think it takes itself very seriously at all. Yeah, Dustin Hoffman, he maybe tries to tackle this a little bit more in his own mind, if you will, as this being a huge, huge social agenda movie. Yes, women's right was very big. 1982, the ERA movement was trying to press through. It was a big, big topic at the time, and still is, let's be honest. But I don't take this movie seriously. I take this movie as a lighthearted comedy. I like the cinematography of it. I like it all being filmed in New York and upstate New York. I love just the acting and the quarrels and just the banter between the characters. I think it is great. I probably watch this movie, I'll be honest, 4 or 5 times a year. And you can call me an idiot, man. It's like up there with Ted and your Kubrick movies. I watch them a few times a year. I love it.
You're
I
an
love it.
idiot.
Hey now,
I
hey
am an
now, hey
idiot.
now.
I know.
Hey
I
now.
know. Hey now.
Don't be bringing Kubrick into
What are you
this
talking
now.
about? We bring Stanley Kubrick in on every podcast. It
Well,
all comes back to Kubrick.
There's a reason why.
There's a reason for that, yes. For me, it's not the perfect movie, but for a lighthearted comedy, it's pretty damn close. I give it an A-. All right, Ted, wrap it up for us. Where are you on it?
Well, I guess I have to be the middle of the two of you because, while I don't have the praise that Eric just had for it, but I completely understand having the passion for a movie like that. I'm not nearly as harsh on it as Ken is. I think this movie works. This movie reminds me why I like movies. Eric, you're exactly right. It's lighthearted where it needs to be. There are portions of it that do shine some lights, but it does it in a way that's not in your face and it's not pushing an agenda. But it does shine some light on how some people are treated in society. But it never preaches it. You have to come to that conclusion on your own. I think also, too, Eric, you had a very good point with Michael Dorsey's character is kind of likable because he's unlikable. I think that's a very good point. I think over the past hour or so that we've discussed the movie, it's summed up very well there, and I think it took us this long to come up with that line. He's not likable. He's not a good guy, but he endears himself to you in a strange way. Like I said, the score is atrocious, but like you also said, Eric, it is a product of its time. Even while I can't stand it, and it does take me out of the movie a few times, it doesn't hurt the movie for me. The characters work. I like the characters. I don't have some sort of feeling for whether I just don't like them, like the Dabney Coleman character, or you feel sorry for Charles Durning's character. I feel something for each of these characters, and I think that says something about the movie that makes you feel something for the characters one way or another. I can't overlook that, I guess is what I should say. It's funny, and the fact that Dustin Hoffman doesn't think it's a comedy, like I said before, Dustin Hoffman loves him some Dustin Hoffman. But it's a fun movie. It's a movie that I'll definitely watch over, even though I don't like the score again. It'll be a movie that I'll sit and I'll watch again. For sure. I have a hard time talking about the greatness of movies. I know it's hard because sometimes I do come off that way, especially with something that I'm extremely passionate about, like Stanley Kubrick movies. But did the movie break any ground? No. But do we want that out of every movie? No, this is a good movie. It's well made. And as far as Sydney Pollack goes, I know Out of Africa is considered, probably because it won the Academy Award, his best movie. This might be his best movie. It's definitely probably his most rewatchable movie. I know we're going to be talking about The Firm, but he hits every point here. He nails it in the way it's directed, and allowing somebody like Bill Murray to essentially go off script and ad-lib everything, that's a decision that the director had to make. Even though he didn't necessarily want him at the beginning, he saw and made the accommodations. It actually worked. When we talk about The Firm, we'll discuss about what we think about Sydney Pollack. This is, for me, of the 4 movies that we're going to discuss, well, Sydney Pollack, this is going to probably be my favorite of the 4 that we're reviewing. I mean, that says something. This movie it's a good movie. It's a fun movie. At the end of the day, I'm going to give this movie a B. A solid movie. I can't lie and say that I didn't like it or blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, it's a good story. And we have to remember that's what these movies are. They're stories. And it's a good story.
Awesome. Well, that's some interesting foreshadowing about The Firm. If you're giving this a B, you might be going a little bit lower on The Firm, possibly, huh?
Have to tune in and find out.
That's right, folks. So our next movie is going to be the fourth one that we're going to be reviewing from our director, Sydney Pollack. The 1993 release The Firm, starring Gene Hackman and Tom Cruise. This is a movie I haven't seen probably in over 10 years, so I'm really looking forward to watching this one a few times and reviewing it with all of you. Ted, where can everyone find us out there?
Well, you can find us on Twitter at movie_marquee. Join us there on Twitter and we'll discuss all the different movies that we've been reviewing.
You can also go to our Facebook page, the Movie Marquee. You can go ahead and chat. You know, I feel like want to mention some movies that you enjoy a lot and want to get a discussion going. We would love to have those discussions with you. You can also join us on Anchor. Anchor allows you to go on and record a message. Who knows? We might even play your message right here on this podcast.
That's right, Ken. All three of us do this for the love of the movies. We don't make any money on this. There's no profit in it. We do it because we love the movies and we love doing
There's no money in it?
No money. Oh,
No money.
I'm sorry. No money.
Somebody never told me that we weren't going to make money.
Well, this will be our last podcast, folks. I'm sorry
Uh-oh.
about that. The check's been stopped, but we do this because we love movies and we'd love to hear from you. So please drop us a line. And yeah, maybe you'll even join us one day on it, folks. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. We'll see you next episode, of course, where we'll be reviewing The Firm. I'm Eric. Thanks for hanging with us. Ted, Ken.
See you at the movies.
We'll see you next time at the Movie Marquee. Goodbye.
So long, everybody.
Bye-bye.